An election appeals committee is recommending a runoff by-election to decide who will hold the 12th position on Blood Tribe Council on the Blood Reserve. Two candidates tied for that spot during an election last November. Robin Littlebear was eventually chosen by a coin toss, but the loser appealed, and the appeals committee has decided the fairest way is to proceed by holding a two-candidate by-election. Terry Vogt reports.
They put runoff by-election.
Kyla Crow is getting ready to start campaigning again, 2 months after losing a spot on Blood Tribe Council through an unlucky coin toss. Her opponent, Robin Littlebear, is a relative, and the women are prepared to fight it out at the polls.
Yeah, we're fine. No, we're fine with it.
What Crow and many others weren't fine with was the procedure used to break the tie vote on Election Day. The appeals committee says a recount should have been the first step and should have been done immediately. Instead, trying to do a recount weeks later turned into a nightmare, despite the fact that they were using electronic voting machines.
Some people like to believe that machines are infallible, but they're not. It's us who run them. We're all fallible, and it depends if you have to use best practices, and if you don't, you run into difficulties.
Election officials ran into a series of difficulties, from a shortage of memory packs to checking the sensors and running the proper test before the ballots were recounted. Not to mention the ballots themselves were stored improperly, which caused the ink to bleed through on some of the ballots.
They were secured away, so there wasn't a question of the ballots being tampered with or we losing any, but it was the way they were kept, which affected their condition.
In the end, it was determined it would be impossible to get a valid or legal recount, either by machine or manually.
Well, I understand where the appeal committee is coming from. I just had a few questions myself that I responded to the decision that was made. I guess, why did it take so long when the recount should have happened right after the election?
Band residents say a runoff now seems fair, but some still question why a coin toss was used in the first place.
I think they should have done it proper. That way they won't have to be doing this over again.
It'll now be up to Chief and Council to appoint a returning officer and set a date for the runoff by-election. Members of the appeals committee say they're hoping that can be done as quickly as possible. Terry Vogt, CTV News on the Blood Reserve.
Band Council is expected to set the by-election date on Monday after receiving a written report from the Election Appeals Committee. And local supporters of the Idle No More movement say they need to continue to be vocal and visible if they hope to be successful in getting controversial changes to the Indian Act overturned.
With respect, with dignity, with some honesty and integrity for the truth of what happened in this land over hundreds of years, over thousands of years. Thank you very much.
Professor Tony Hall spoke very passionately on the topic last night at an information session at the University of Lethbridge. A panel of concerned citizens outlined their reasons as to why the bill is unfair and needs to be revisited in the House of Commons. They're encouraging people from all walks of life to join in their movement so that the voices of all Canadians will be heard by the Harper government.
Encounters and relationships speak of issues that go to the very depth of what Canada should be and must be about if we are to rise to a higher standard, if we are to be a beacon in the world that can look out at the world and champion human rights.
The diversity of support and the diversity of people that are coming out really reflects that this is not an Indian thing, and it never has been. It's been a Canadian issue.
A second National Day of Action is planned for January the 28th.